if you went back a few months or even last, he would have been absolutely nailed on for the squad and probably even starting in the team. And especially, for a home World Cup, for him to be able to come and do that. If he was playing in a better team, he'd be scoring goals.
Hello, and welcome back to the All Out Soccer Podcast. Myself, Jeremy Goldstein, and my co-host, Joseph McBride, we're two football fans talking about soccer. We focus on a fusion of the MLS, the U.S. men's and women's soccer teams, in the build-up to the 2026 World Cup, which is our focus this week, with some teams in, some teams out, figuring it out literally right now. Teams are playing for their lives. Joe, how are we doing?
I'm really well, thank you. I'm absolutely loving the qualifiers at the moment when it gets to this crunch time of obviously the qualifying stage. So it's making me even more excited for the World Cup next year.
I saw a tweet the other day that was like, about why someone loves international football all of a sudden. People used to bemoan international breaks. It's kind of this last bastion of the lack of financial involvement in the world's game. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen FIFA trying to get a lot more money into it. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, it's been good to see some of the pure joy, pure emotion of fans. It's in a way that can't be bought in any single way. But we'll get into that. We still love our club football. We're going to start with the U.S. men's national team. Wasn't a World Cup qualifier. They have their place already secured in the World Cup. Why? Because they're the hosts. Would they have qualified? Hopefully, but it's never a guarantee with the U.S. men's national team. But they did manage to beat Paraguay 2-1 in Philadelphia on Saturday night in a game that had everything.
Yeah, it certainly did. I mean, it was frantic from start to finish. It was a really, really solid performance. And on his return to the national team after 16 months since his last start, Giovanni Reyna scored 4 minutes on his return with a headed goal, the first of his professional career. Max Arfston was on the right-hand side, crossed it in, and it was a near-post header off the underside of the crossbar and in. Really, really nice finish. Not someone you'd imagine that hadn't scored many headers before. But just a quick note, Max Arfston, I'm so impressed by. Obviously, Anthony Robinson, when fit, will be the starter, and he is a very good player. But at the moment, his fitness has been a concern. But Arfston is just really impressed. I think he got 3 assists in the Gold Cup. He's playing really well for his country. He's playing well for the crew, even though they got eliminated from the MLS playoffs. But really, really nice pick out from him. And I think if there is one positive to come from Robinson's absence, it's the fact that Arfston has shown that he can at least be a solid backup, if not a future starter. But unfortunately, the lead didn't last for too long. Just 6 minutes later, Alex Arce equalised. Also a header, this time at the back post, as the US was caught sleeping. A really long ball over the top out to the left-hand side to Miguel Almiron, of course, of Atlanta United in MLS. He did a really nice first time, like half-volleyed cross into the box. The US were napping. They were completely out of position. It was a free header, 1-1. And then it was quite a cagey game after that. I mean, the first half ended as a 1-1 draw. In the second half, both teams were, applying the pressure, but not wanting to allow the other in behind. But the goal came, and once again, Reyna was the creator this time. He played the ball, cut back, inside the box, got a little bit lucky because a deflection landed straight into the path of Folarin Balogun, who smashed it home. And that was how the game ended. There was still time for a little bit of antics towards the end in terms of a mini brawl, but we'll get onto that in a minute. I think, first of all, Jeremy, we have to talk about Giovanni Reyna.
He looked pretty good. And look, the quality of this game, there were flashes where it was really strong from both teams, and there were large stretches where it was not the highest quality football game that you'll ever see. These are games historically that Gio Reyna has played well in, where his brush of quality, his creativity, where all of a sudden he becomes emboldened on the ball, is really, really good. What really stood out to me was on his header, he was calling for the ball in the box. This was, a few minutes into his return to international football. When he steps on the field for the U.S. men's national team, he feels like he is, if not the best player on the field, one of the best players on the pitch. And that's a really, really important quality to have. Again, he hasn't played that much. He just has about 150 club minutes this year for Borussia Mönchengladbach in Germany. But this is a player who's been playing top flight football in Germany since he was a teenager, obviously pairing with Erling Haaland at Borussia Dortmund. I have some post-game quotes from after the game. He said his fitness was about 80 to 85%, but he still played 75 minutes. So that was really, really good to see. He said it's hard to say when he'll be 100%, but I'm not far. Definitely getting there. I feel really good. I've always had confidence in myself. To see a goal going in the back of the net, it's always nice. I just want to stay in dangerous areas and continue to work. He definitely is in dangerous areas. He is the was the USA's top target throughout. We talk about where he stands in the U.S. pecking order. We said he needed to have a really, really strong camp in order to impress. There's some players I think he's in contention with for like a last spot on the World Cup plane, players like Diego Luna and whatnot. I think Reyna is a game changer that you have to have over these sort of fringe MLS players who have never really proved it against international competition and never really proved it in a major competition for the U.S. like Reyna has in the past. He's already earned CONCACAF Nations League player of the tournament. He's earned 3 spots on the CONCACAF Nations team of the tournament. He's a really, really good player for the USA.
Yeah, he's never lacked self-confidence or belief, and I think that's been clear. I mean, that was kind of part of the reason he fell out with the former coach, Greg Berhalter, and that whole situation. But he's been given, a new opportunity under Pochettino, and that's some head coach to get an opportunity from as well. He backed him as well. He said how much of a talent he can be. He admitted that he wasn't where he should be right now, but to, accept that challenge and come into a game and get a goal and an assist, I think it's the perfect response. And, it's great for the US. It's great for him. It's great. It's just positive all around, which hasn't always been the case in recent camps, but so far looking really good.
Yeah, I'm really, really impressed. I have no idea what this means for him going forward. Like, not at all. But it was a great start. And if he is fit, he should get minutes against Uruguay, which we're going to come on to. He wasn't involved in the fracas at the end, though. That was bizarre. It was a friendly. I mean, it wasn't a very friendly moment.
It was not. So just to clarify, so the game had just entered additional time. The US had a 2-1 lead, cruising towards victory, but Paraguay was trying to, get a late equalizer. The ball went out of play. It was a US throw. And Gustavo Gomez of Paraguay picked up the ball and did not want to let go of it. Alex Freeman, the Orlando City player, went over to try and wrestle the ball off him and ended up just getting into a bit of a little physical altercation, wrestling for the ball. A few shoves happened, and then suddenly both benches cleared, and it's an absolute melee out on the field with punches thrown, apparently. And after the game, Pochettino said that he doesn't like to see this. This isn't what he wants. But also, back in January, like recently after he'd been appointed, he made a very big point out of how he wants the US to take inspiration from Argentina and kind of go to war on the field. And as much as it's not something you want to see, just the fact that the whole US team rushed over to defend Freeman and put their bodies on the line kind of shows they've embraced that spirit. So just to jog the memory, he said we need to follow Argentina, the world champions. They're very good players, but most importantly is the mentality, how they compete as a group and the belief they have when they go on the pitch. They go to war and defend the badge and the flag, and that's what we need as the US. And I certainly feel that there's a lot more, since the results have picked up and we're getting closer and building the momentum, it does feel like there's a spirit there. And it's, the US look really good.
Yeah, and I will say it's starting to become a very similar group of players. Obviously, there's outside of the 5, white whales who were missing from this team, and Chris Richards, Christian Pulisic, Tyler Adams, Anthony Robinson, Weston McKennie. Did I say all 5? Yeah. This is the team. This is the team. There's some guys at the bottom of the roster who are probably not going to be there, but it's those 5 plus this group. And this group has now been in the mix for, I would say, the last 12 months. A lot of them were at the Gold Cup last summer. This is the team. These players now know each other. These players are all similar age. It's not like we're getting there aren't a lot of 18-year-olds on the young end, and there aren't a lot of 30-year-olds on the old end. Most of these guys are 22 to 26 and have played with each other or against each other for a very, very long time. This is the group. They all know each other. They're all at the peak age. And again, you just want to see all of them together, which we'll get onto, those big players in mix with the other ones. But because it is that consistent group, I think that bodes well. And that really showed itself in that moment at the end of that sort of team collective strength.
Yeah, they got each other's backs. And there's a contrast when it comes to international soccer. Usually, it's a tight-knit group and everyone fends for each other, or everyone has their own little cliques. Like it happened with England famously, where United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool players would all kind of be on their own and not really interact. And that showed when they had such a good team that should have won so many things and didn't do anything. And then you get a team that maybe is a bit less talented, but then makes it to the finals when they have cohesion there. So I feel like I really like what Pochettino is building. He's kind of got that mentality up there, which is exactly what he wanted to do. So long may it continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's look ahead to the next USA games. Obviously confirmed is tonight, Tuesday, which will go out after this is released, against Uruguay. So we won't have a full recap about that. But Uruguay, obviously, we know Fede Valverde, no Darwin Nunez. That's a name I haven't said in a while. And Marco Bielsa is obviously the coach for Uruguay, longtime friend and countryman of Mauricio Pochettino. Again, it'll be similar sort of story, I feel like, as today. Some players will play. Again, maybe Haji Wright will play. Didn't feature in the last game. Looks like Fuller and Balogun is the USA's top striker, but we'll talk more about that, obviously, in the months to come. Then in the spring, there are rumblings that the US will face both Belgium and Portugal in Atlanta. Well, it's particularly the game against Portugal would be at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in Atlanta. It's one of the biggest indoor stadiums in the country. Obviously, the U.S. Federation expects to pack the house with Cristiano Ronaldo in attendance, who hasn't been to the U.S. since 2014, before today, when he apparently was at the White House with President Trump alongside the King of Saudi Arabia, where he currently plays his club football. Why is Ronaldo hasn't been in the U.S. since then? Redacted. I'm not going to get into that. Just some legal issues regarding a case from 2009 that we're not going to elaborate on further. But this would be a major, major coup. Belgium and Portugal. These are exactly the games the U.S. needs to be seeing how they just stack up against.
Absolutely. I don't mind it at all. I mean, they will absolutely pack that stadium. I can't even imagine how much the tickets will be. Obviously, Portugal has qualified, which we'll get onto later. So he will be in the States, although potentially with a game ban after he got a red card in qualifying, but that's for another day. But yeah, that's kind of that's the test you want to go up against. You know, Portugal is going to be a contender. They're definitely going to be one of the favorites. I don't think they'll win it, but you never know. They'll be used to the hot climates. And it's exactly the test you want. I think Belgium is nowhere near as good as they used to be. So that's actually a game I think the US should look to win. I remember at the World Cup, even though they lost, Canada actually should have beaten Belgium. Alphonso Davies missed a penalty despite taking one for them. And it should have been Joe David. But yeah, great test. Exactly what Pochettino wants, and a really good time of year to kind of see where you're at as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really exciting. Again, not confirmed, nothing confirmed, just rumors and conjecture. Obviously, the sources that spoke with the Athletic, so they could not give any further details or reveal their identity. So this is something that could be months and months away from even being codified, but would be super, super exciting if this were to come to be. It is International Week, but we are going to take a little trip stateside, or remain stateside, and talk about some MLS news, just to cover two big bits. Obviously, MLS is changing its schedule, and the MLS is slightly tweaking its deal with Apple. Both big points. I'm going to get very quickly on to the MLS schedule changes, but Joe, just first your reaction to just hearing all of this come to be in such a similar time frame.
Yeah, I mean, the first news dropped, and I think the other one literally came back 24 hours later, and it was a lot to take in. Obviously, it's been stuff that's been discussed for quite a while, kind of rumblings of, you know, are they going to vote for this, or are there going to be changes to, you know, the TV and everything? So for both to drop was kind of, I think it was good and bad thing. It was a lot to take in, but I think it's good that they're just kind of putting it out there. International break was on, and they're reminding everyone about the MLS and how the league is. But I'm really happy with both changes, as much as there are cons to both of them, as there will be with any change in decision. I think long term, it's going to be really beneficial.
Yeah, I think the same. Overdue, I would say, definitely, for obviously the first one, and then the second one about the TV deal. Smart on them to change. So what happened? Very broadly, just getting into both bits very quickly, the MLS schedule has changed. The 2027-2028 MLS regular season, yes, that is a two-part season, a la NBA, how you'd say the NBA season in America, a la how you'd say any Premier League sort of season, will begin mid to late July 2027. The Audi Cup playoffs will be in May 2028, just very, very similar to a European calendar. They're going to observe international breaks, midwinter breaks. There'll be no games around January time. Just kind of how the Bundesliga does it. Again, it's just not feasible to play in some of these markets in that time of year. That makes sense. Obviously, think about our friends up in Canada. There's going to be a transitionary schedule going into effect in 2027 from February to May. There'll be a 14-game regular season playoffs, and there's going to be a whole bunch of things just because obviously these calendars aren't going to fully dovetail from one season to the next, and that transition will happen in the early stages of 2027. The MLS website just gives the reasons for their the main things: optimizing the global transfer market, 2, maximizing player signings, 3, aligning with the FIFA calendar, and 4, elevating the playoffs. These are all the reasons that we've hit on. every single time we've discussed why this should happen. I'm really, really excited as to what this means for transfers. Players can come to the MLS on the same schedule. I thought previously that the MLS calendar actually kind of benefited the MLS and that players could then go on loan to European clubs for a few months at the beginning of the year, but that's something that we haven't really seen in about 10, 15 years. So overdue, finally happened. The MLS is modernizing, and they just had no choice if they wanted to just – you can't just be the world's rebel. This is not a sport you invented. This is not – well, soccer versus football, different conversation. This is not your sport. So you just have to kind of align with the international standards, and it's about time.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like, obviously with the basketball, I'm not going to say hockey, that'd be controversial. Baseball, it's the game that they created over here. So they lead the way, and that's how it is. And everyone dreams of playing in that league. With MLS, unfortunately, at the moment, that isn't the case. You're not growing up in certain places in Europe and sometimes, obviously, in America, and that being your intended final destination. So just to get those transfers in and to make things more streamlined, it makes total sense. But I actually really respect and rate that the MLS just kind of put down their thoughts and on reasonings as to why. That's not something you often see in a soccer league or a soccer club anywhere. So I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, it's about time. It's about damn time. The MLS is also changing their partnership with Apple, which has had an interesting time since Messi came, and obviously that deal was announced. But what's exactly changing now, Joe?
Well, the big news is the MLS Season Pass, which is an additional, payment. You don't have to have Apple TV, a subscription to watch the MLS. You can just buy the pass. You can obviously have both, but even if you have Apple TV, you have to pay for the add-on. That is going. This will be the final season that is in play. From next season onwards, if you just have an Apple TV subscription, you'll have access to the MLS. And I think it's a positive move. As we said, as much as it is still paying for a subscription, a lot of people have Apple TV anyway. I know Severance recently massively helped the subscriptions of people wanting to watch that show. I know you're a big fan of that one, Jeremy, as well. Yeah. But they're getting a lot more sports. They've secured, they've got MLB, they have Friday doubleheaders. They've secured the US races in the F1 calendar. So there's a lot of other things that they're trying to throw into the mix. And another initiative that I like is that they've continued giving back to fans that have season tickets. So if you have a season ticket to an MLS club starting from next season, you will get an Apple TV subscription for free as part of that. So positive changes. And the other major thing to note is that it was a 10-year agreement previously. Now it's going to be revised at the end of the 28-29 season. So no guarantees it will stay on there after that. It could be going elsewhere. But they're certainly trying to entice more fans in and put it where people can see it.
Yeah, absolutely. A matter of, is this enough of a accessible change is a question. I mean, it's certainly a step in the right direction, but it's just not on just full linear access TV like it could be. Obviously, there's not as much money to be made there, but that's exchanged for exposure. It's a delicate balance, and I think the MLS is doing their best. But I think, again, just like the move for the calendar, definitely a step in the right direction. Hey, if you want to get involved in the conversation, shoot us an email at jeremy.goldstein@reachplc.com. Please engage by subscribing to the show wherever you get podcasts and leave us a like while you're at it. That's the end of part 1 of this week's All Out Soccer. But stick around for part 2 just after this break. All right, we're back. We're talking World Cup. There are games on right now. Joe, I must tell you that Scott McTominay has scored a first half goal that has put Scotland on the precipice of their first World Cup in a long, long time. That's fun. There's been some fun World Cup stuff. We're getting teams to qualify, getting teams to almost qualify. We're getting teams to see their dreams fall very, very flat. We're going to go in depth on 2 of those, Ireland, Nigeria. But before that, Joe, do you have any other bits of World Cup qualification that have really tickled your fancy in recent days?
There's been a few. I love how Norway made a statement against Italy the other day, even though they'd already qualified. It's been pretty chaotic. Obviously, the Ireland one was a big one, which I'm going to let you explain in a minute, but that was just unbelievable viewing, as much as I felt for Szoboszlai, our Liverpool lad from Hungary. But it's been a really exciting kind of finale. I feel like there has been some teams that have dominated their groups in their respected continents and federations, but there's also been a lot of surprise results and a lot of teams overachieving and underperforming at the same time. So yeah, it's just got me really excited for next year already.
It's going to be great. And obviously the expanded field means a little dilution and saturation of quality, but we get a mix of teams who probably have no business being in the World Cup just based on merit on the field who are going to make it. And that leads to interesting storylines. Let me walk through continent by continent some examples. In Asia, there's now 7 spots. Who has nabbed the last one? Or excuse me, to a spot, an extra one, 6 spots and an extra spot in the Inter-Confederation playoffs. It's Iraq. We're 3-2 winners against the UAE in a 2-legged aggregate. Oh my God. There are some Iraqi players who play in major European leagues. Fun fact. In Africa, what's happened? South Africa have qualified. Cape Verde have qualified. Ivory Coast are back in the World Cup. That's exciting. If you take the best 4 runners up, you had 4 teams. It was Nigeria versus the DR Congo in the final for a spot in the Inter-Confederation playoffs. Joe's going to say who won that game. In CONCACAF, you have absolute scenes. There are 3 groups because there's 3 teams that are already qualified, US, Canada, Mexico. It's looking like, as of now, some mix of these 6 teams, 3 of them will be in the World Cup. Suriname, Panama, Curacao, Jamaica, Honduras, and Haiti. Oh my, hello Caribbean. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, you can't go wrong with any of those teams. We've seen Panama at recent World Cups, but it'd be fascinating to see any of these other teams qualify. Obviously, Curacao and Suriname would be 2 of the smallest countries to ever play in the World Cup. South America, we've talked about. Bolivia into the Inter-Confederation playoffs. In Oceania, we have New Zealand who've qualified for the World Cup for the first time since 2010. And in Europe, it is absolute carnage right now. It is happening as we are talking about it. Literally right now, it's going to be too much to run through, but a lot of teams are going, including Norway. One team that will not be going is Hungary. They lost 3-2 to Ireland at home in one of the most unbelievable games of football ever. Troy Parrott hat trick. I'm just going to go straight to the jugular. 96th minute equalizer with +5. Queef Kelleher, the Irish goalie, boots it long. Liam Scales, header. Troy Parrott sneaks in front of the Hungarian keeper, scores the winner. Amazing call on the Irish syndicated television. If you haven't heard it, obviously I would recommend taking a listen. Absolutely fantastic. Troy Parrott also scored 2 goals against Portugal at home just a few days before in a game that Cristiano Ronaldo was sent off. Ireland needed to win both games to qualify for the playoffs. They have. Wasn't quite enough to sneak ahead of Portugal for the automatic spot, but they will be into a European playoff against a host of other teams in a very, very similar skill level to them. It's absolutely fascinating. You're getting again, I think it'd be great for Ireland to be in a World Cup in America just because it would just be absolutely fascinating. But I could do a monologue about any of these teams that have qualified. I think it's just so fascinating and really one of the last bastions of untouched sport from commercial endeavors. And it's just absolutely wonderful. You really play for the freaking badge in this sport. And they do that in Nigeria too, but they weren't as lucky as the Irish.
No, they didn't have the luck of the Irish. And I mean, it's their own fault without being too brutal. They had a terrible qualifying campaign and managed to just sneak their way into the African playoffs. 4 teams went to Morocco for a little inter-tournament, and the winner was the one that progressed to the other playoffs with all these other teams from all over the place. But they beat Gabon in the semi-finals just 1-1 in regulation time. They won 4-1 in the end after additional time, with USMNT scoring a brace in additional time to face the Congo, but things didn't go to plan. They drew 1-1. It went to penalties. It was back and forth. Jeremy and I were watching it in the office. One keeper made a save, and then the other one, it was flipping. But
the pouring rain.
It was really bad rain over there as well. Lasers going on and the players taking the penalties. It was just carnage, but that's what you expect. But Nigeria lost. The Congo made it through those 4 teams. Very impressive against Cameroon, Gabon, and Nigeria. It was a massive shame for Nigeria, and they took it interestingly after the final whistle, is what I will say. Their head coach, Eric Schell, accused Congo of using voodoo during the penalty shootout to will their side through to the further side of the playoffs. He said, during the penalty, Congo did some voodoo. Every time I looked over, and I was really nervous after looking, It's not gone down well in Nigeria. They are, fanatic nation in terms of soccer. Really, really get behind the team. And the federation has apologized to the citizens, to the president, to the government for not making it. It's something they're going to have to address. They have a really talented group of players. Didn't work out for them this time, but fair play to Congo. You got to beat what's put in front of you, and Nigeria can do that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a shame. And Nigeria's form in the last 12 months really, really improved. They started off their World Cup campaign in just absolute terrible form. They just got themselves into it as an absolute hole in the group. Some of these qualifiers were as far back as 2023. This is arguably the most talented team in the continent, and they're missing the tournament. I mean, it's their fault. They didn't perform in a few games where they needed to. But I would say African qualifying is one of the hardest gauntlets and extremely luck dependent. Versus in South America, everyone plays everyone, and it's kind of this egalitarian system of who advances. Versus in Africa, you get drawn into these groups of completely varying difficulties. If you look at some of it's just completely lopsided from group to group. It's based on the FIFA international rankings, which are imprecise, obviously, because they're as good as they can be. And you just have teams qualifying that have no business qualifying, and the talented teams don't make it. And look, you got to beat who's in front of you. And Nigeria are good enough where it shouldn't matter who they're playing. But I do think it's a shame, because this is a nation of great importance, significance, cultural weight that will be missing from the World Cup. But hopefully the DR Congo gives us an interesting story, some interesting stories as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they travel well. They would have filled the stadiums, even with the expense. They would have done it. They'd have found a way. It's a shame, but they didn't make it. And we want the best at the moment to be in that competition.
Yeah, but again, there's going to be still plenty of storylines at the World Cup. Again, 48 teams instead of 32. More chances at interesting topics.
Yeah, and just they're a team that's not going to make it. Just a good little segue going back to the US as well. To end this podcast for the week, I recently caught up with former Norwich midfielder Paul McVeigh. And of course, with it being Norwich, we had to discuss how they're doing in the Championship and had to discuss Josh Sargent. Recently been quite flat. Has kind of fallen out of the picture, even though we were really hyping him up at the start of this series of the podcast, especially. And he is sure that he is the guy and should be the guy and would have been the guy if it was a few months ago and they went. He backs him to come back, but with Norwich sitting 23rd in the Championship, needing a massive overhaul. Yeah, I spoke to him about what they need to do and how they get out of the rut. Well, you said about a team near the bottom of the Championship. Unfortunately, one of your former teams, Norwich, is one of those at the moment. Liam Manning's gone. Seems like, I mean, they started the season okay. Josh Sargent was in great form. Hasn't gone that way since. Speaking on him specifically over here in New York, for example.
Yeah.
He was kind of seen as the guy for a while to be the striker, and he's since come out of the fold. Just from your perspective, how is he thought of at Norwich in general? And what do you think of him as a player? Do you think he's brilliant?
I think he is, yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a real shame because, as you just mentioned, I think if you went back a few months or even last, he would have been absolutely nailed on for the squad and probably even starting in the team. And especially, for a home World Cup, for him to be able to come and do that. But unfortunately, I would say probably less to do with him, almost like no fault of his, although of course he does have some responsibility because he's in the Norwich team. But if he was playing in a better team, he'd be scoring goals. The fact that he's scrapping around for, trying to hold the ball up on the halfway line, sort of 70 yards, 60 yards from the goal, is showing why he's not scoring the goals at the minute. Because there has to be a lot to do with, what opportunities, how many chances he had in the last 7 home games, that they've lost. It's that is the challenge. So I would say you have to take this in the context of what's happening. And he is still, in my opinion, a very, very, very good player. And I think that he should definitely still be definitely in the squad and probably get a chance of starting. Now, there might be someone in better form that the head coach might want to go with, but I definitely think he should be in the mix because that kind of whole form is temporary, class is permanent. I think that's almost like that couldn't have been written for anyone more specifically than Josh Sargent right now.
Yeah, well, the guy leading a lot at the moment is Folarin Balogun, who he changed citizenship to US a few years ago. He was born in London, played in the Arsenal academy, but actually elsewhere in the Championship, Haji Wright, American, he's kind of getting the nod at the moment. He's been in great form, and like you said, circumstances, right? They're playing amazingly under Frank, so he's getting the chances. But in terms of mindset as well, I know obviously it's tough to do with the club situation, but for Sargent and for Norwich to overcome this hurdle, is it a back to basics job or?
Yeah, I think this as well. There's definitely been a shift, and I'd probably put my former teammate in there, of Russell Martin. That he's someone that has such a clear style of play that it's like, this is why we're doing it. And of course, for him as Southampton, when he obviously took them into the Premier League, it has been successful. And I think what's interesting, it's almost like what can you say? Is it the fashion of football, of how it's being played? That of course Pep Guardiola had the innovation to be able to create this style of football, that he had the best players in the world playing this style of football that no one else had played before, and they did it at the highest level. And then, of course, he did it at Bayern, now he's done it at City, and it's been so unbelievably successful. And the problem is people have been trying to copy what Pep's doing. Now, interestingly, Pep isn't even doing what Pep usually does. So if you have the best manager in the world, not necessarily always doing what he's famous for, but you have everyone else trying to copy him, and I think Norwich are a victim of that. They're going, well, actually, we're going to try and play out, and we're going to play three at the back, and we're going to do this. We're going to have all these... This going to build up through the waves, and actually it's just not working. And I think this is probably where football, in my opinion, has really kind of lost its way. It feels like that the objective is to win the game. It's not to pass the ball as many times as possible. So whenever you have this almost like juxtaposition of, we want to have a really, really attractive style of football and we need to win games, but it feels like people are more interested, care more, or I don't know exactly, because I'm obviously not working with the teams, but it's just to be able to go, why would you play from the back when you keep getting caught and you keep conceding goals? It's just like the most basic rule. You wouldn't ask a U7 team to play it like that. Why would you ask like a team who doing it in the professional league? So going back to Norwich, it's the same thing. It's like, I think they just need a manager to have some real clarity. And I'm not saying you have to go back and do it the way things happened previously. But for instance, my second spell at Norwich City, we had a guy called Paul Lambert, and he was a Champions League winner. Mark Zidane in the final of the Champions League, outstanding player, had an amazing career at Celtic. When he came in as our manager at Norwich City, do you know what his team talk was?
Go on.
He literally named the team in this like really, really sort of broad Glaswegian accent. He'd name the 11 players, and that was hard enough to understand. And then his team talk every time was, just go out and win the game. And he'd walk out of the room.
Inspiring.
And that season, we won the league and went on a 32-game unbeaten run. It's like, there has to be, this is all we're doing. So the focus and the way his style was, every time we were either losing or drawing a game, he just put another attacker on. So we ended up sometimes like 4, 5, 6 strikers on the pitch. It was like, it's just shit or bust. It doesn't matter if we lose 1, 2, or 3. We're going to try and win. And inevitably we won games. And the amount of games we won in the last minute of games, not the amount of time. But again, what the point of that whole story is, and to share that with you, is to say that everything that he focused on was the outcome.